When I started seminary in 2016, I enrolled full-time and quickly got a part-time job at the church we were attending. I had 3 kids who were 6, 5, and 1 at the time, and only 2 of them were in school for full days. My youngest was in morning preschool a couple of days a week. My husband was working full-time at a local Christian nonprofit, and he would soon become the executive director of that nonprofit. Life was full. I snapped this picture after my first week of class. It's an accurate depiction of my state. I was exhausted, and part of that exhaustion was because I was starting something new, and I was settling into new rhythms. And even though I loved the formal learning environment, it had been a long time since I had taken classes and was writing papers. But I was also stretched too thin. I remember at the end of that first semester telling someone it felt like my bloodstream was 75% coffee. I felt like I was vibrating. I was just so stressed about getting all the projects done, getting good grades, taking care of my kids, keeping up with all the things. During those 4 years, Nathan and I frequently had intense conversations about how much I was working. I was having a hard time letting go of my commitment to getting good grades like A's and B's, which are only really relevant if I eventually wanted to pursue a doctoral degree. Nathan wanted to know that I was also committed to spending quality time with our family, to resting and recovering. And so we experimented with some Sabbath rhythms. We turned off the screens, we got outside, we delighted in food, and we spent time together. And when we followed through with those days of rest, we found that they were so meaningful. It felt like those days stretched on forever, but in the best ways. But honestly, it was really difficult to maintain those rhythms. Life crept in. Like, what do we do when we travel? What if I have a final exam or a final paper due that Monday? We, like so many people, have struggled to maintain this as a consistent rhythm. Pacing and finding time for work and rest is a high value for me, but making that rest meaningful, doing things like disconnecting from screens and not allowing work to creep in, well, that has been difficult. And that's why when Tom and Mark gave me a few options from emotionally healthy spirituality to preach on, I knew that this is the one that I wanted to tackle. This sermon is just as much for me as it is for you. For this series, we're leaning pretty heavily on material that Liquid Church in New York created, and all of it is based on a book by Peter Scazzero called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Most of us feel the strain of a life that outpaces our need for rest. We have jobs and volunteer work, our kids have extracurriculars, homework, and performances. And on top of that, we're doing our best to maintain friendships. Others of us are retired and not in a stage of life that's marked by busyness, but I believe that there's something for you in this message as well, something that your soul is longing for. And it may be that as you hear this message, you reflect on people in your life who are busy in these kinds of ways and how you might help them find rest. And isn't it interesting how life feels different as things have opened up after the pandemic? We all experienced the shutdown differently. For some of us, this was isolating and a strain on our mental health. For others, this was a welcome relief from the hustle. For me, it was a bit of both. I mentioned last month the difficulties that the pandemic posed for my work as a new pastor in Chicago. But in some ways, I kind of enjoyed staying home so much. By nature, I'm a homebody, and I bought and assembled lots of puzzles. And I kind of miss having the time and space to just lose myself in a 1,000-piece puzzle. Now that things have opened back up, the pressure is on to return to normal. We have swim lessons, piano lessons, homework, church meetings. My husband is traveling for work, and I'm traveling for work, and hopefully we're not traveling on the same days. And now part of me knows what I'm missing. I know what it was like to move slowly during the day. Part of me misses it. I wonder how you're feeling. Put it in the chat, turn to someone around you. Do you miss what life was like during the pandemic?